Hello everyone, Lytro Storm here, and today I'll be following up on What If Carver Found Clementine with Part 2. If you haven't already seen the first part, I highly recommend you check it out, as I won't be recapping it in this video. So to find it, all you gotta do is go into the comment section, or the description, and click the link I posted. But anyways guys, when you finish the video, do feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed, and like as well to see more videos like this. And as always, be sure to join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Links in the description. So, nearing the end of Season 2, the family Jane and Clementine meet in the Howe's ending originally would arrive and join the community. Carver would try and get that family on his side, which I think would go pretty well considering how they were stated to make off with half their food if Clementine let them in. This shows to us that they aren't afraid to go dirty to survive, so I think that they would work their way up to being on Carver's team. However, I don't think that it would last forever. An attack would eventually happen, led by the New Frontier. It makes sense considering they were attacking all sorts of settlements and were implied to have attacked Wellington as well, though that could have just been a random group. Carver would get all of his soldiers ready to fight, but with all the walkers, smoke grenades, flashbangs, and guns, the New Frontier wouldn't necessarily win, but they'd force them out of Howe's. This would lead to the deaths of Carver's randos, all of the 400 Days cast minus Bonnie, as well as Nick sacrificing himself for Luke, and Carlos getting shot like in canon. Most of everyone else disappears, with only Carver, Troy, AJ, Clementine, and Gil escaping together. By the way, Gil is apparently the name of the kid from Jane's ending, so when I say Gil, imagine this kid, he's on screen right now. Anyway, they would get 2 of the trucks and drive out. For a few days they would stay on the road, making the occasional break every once in a while, until one day they stumble upon a junkyard. Here they would see a man getting held up by a few other people, and Clementine can say whether or not they should help them. But Carver will step out of the truck no matter what. Troy would then join him, and Carver would tell the 3 people to put the guns down and turn slowly. This leads to one of them saying that they can talk this out, but Carver isn't hearing any of it. The 3 are forced to drop their guns, and the man who is being held up thanks Carver. He introduces himself as Javier, and then calls out for his family since it's safe now. They then introduce themselves to Clementine and Gil, while Carver and Troy question Max, Lonnie, and Badger. They would ask where their home is, and Badger would be very quick to speak up. He says that they live at a place called Prescott, and that they can show them the way there. Max and Lonnie would have a bit of confusion on their faces, but Badger seemed to know what he was doing. The Garcias would walk toward the group, thanking Carver, who would ask them to join them. They're okay with this, as Carver seems like a nice strong man who can help them out. They would all then load into their vehicles and drive toward Prescott via Badger's help. Once there, they all step outside to see Trip on top of the gate. Upon seeing the New Frontier brands, he would say that he's not letting them in, and that's when Badger would take his opportunity. He punched Troy before running away, with Lonnie fighting Carver. Clementine would then get out of the truck, shooting Lonnie, but by that point Badger would have already left with Max. Trip then welcomes the confused group, with Carver asking lots of questions about security, leadership, and all that good stuff. He wants to know this place in and out to see the improvements he can make. The group chooses to stay the night and ultimately decides to make the place the new home. However, Carver and Troy have other plans. The next day would be pretty good, with everyone getting to meet other people and just bonding. However, when night comes, we get the same New Frontier attack as in canon. Badger, Max, and some other randos pull up, trying to trade Francine for Carver instead of Javi. He would of course refuse though, leading to Francine's death, and the place would get flooded with walkers and smoke grenades. This now ends up in the destruction of Prescott. However, not all of our group would make it out unscathed. Mariana would be shot by one of the New Frontier, and this would lead Javi to take her into a car and leave with everyone else. Trip, Conrad, Eleanor, the Garcias, and our group now escape, and Conrad heavily blames Carver for all of this. During their little argument, Clementine can choose to pull out her gun on Conrad, but if she doesn't, then Troy would. The situation luckily calms down, and everyone would continue their drive until they get blocked by a car. Since Kate wasn't shot though, it would be Kate, Mariana, Eleanor, Gil, and AJ who would go straight to Richmond. With all the walkers ambushing them, the remaining crew would have to seek higher ground, which is where they would meet Jesus. The much bigger group would now make their way through the subway station, but without Clementine being part of the New Frontier, Conrad wouldn't have to lose his life. Instead, everyone carries on until they get to Richmond. Here, Carver would basically say that they're not putting down their guns, which would be followed by David stepping out and seeing his family. David would grab Maury, and Gabe and Kate would go with him, leaving Javi to go into quarantine with everyone else. David comes back for Javi later, and would try to get the group to stay, but because of Javi stealing their gas, Joan would say that she wants to talk to Carver privately. Carver has a much more level-headed approach than Javi, speaking as calmly as possible. He tells Joan that all they did was stop their men from killing a whole family. Then her men chose to destroy an entire settlement. However, he doesn't really care too much. He knows that that's the price of living in this world, and he's fully ready to accept any sort of power he can here to shut his mouth. Joan would be impressed and say that she likes his style, deciding that Carver could be her second in command. He smiles at this, and Joan would allow his people to stay, but Javi and the rest of them have to go. While they're exiled, they're angered by how it seemed like Carver didn't back them up much. Javi, Tripp, Conrad, and Jesus would be forced out on their own, and would eventually get attacked by walkers. The group continues toward the greenhouse and would eventually get pinned down, but since Clementine isn't there to help hold the gate, this would lead to the death of Conrad. David and potentially Clem would then arrive, firing off bullets to distract walkers long enough for everyone to get inside. Clem is there because she has the option to go with David or stay at Richmond, which would basically be her going with Carver's ideology or straying off to help save people. Because of the gunshots, Max and Badger would be on their guard and would tell them to drop their weapons. The crew refuses and the battle would begin. However, with Lonnie dead, Jesus can help out with Max and Badger. This means that Tripp, David, and potentially Clem would easily get Max down, while Javi and Jesus take on Badger. Once Javier lands his first hit, Jesus would bounce off the wall and punch Badger in the face. He'd go on the ground and would back up, trying to grab a pipe, but Javi would be able to stop him. With Badger now beaten, Jesus would want to spare him, and also Max, since they could use them as leverage. Badger would refuse, saying that he'd never help them, and so David would just shoot him right there if Javi hasn't killed him already. This makes Jesus a little displeased, and so he would then leave to go find his people like he did originally. Now with Max in tow, the three men would return to Richmond to try and expose Joan. They would do this similarly to the original, but without Lonnie there to warn her, it would succeed a bit more. When Javi and David pull up to Joan, Carver would be there as well, and the two would agree that they should get thrown in jail, and so they are. However, David is taken for discussion by Joan, while Javi later escapes with Gabe. The gang would now gather in the house, deciding who was going to do what. Kate, Gabe, and Javi would be decided on to get the truck, while Tripp, Ava, and Eleanor stay at the house. However, this would lead to Carver busting down the door and forcing them to come with him. Now, David, Ava, and Tripp would be about to get executed, and Javi chooses who lives. Joan would of course backstab him like she does in the original. This makes Clint decide that they should just let them go and not kill anyone else, but either way that plan fails. If Javi chooses to shoot Joan, then Carver would push Clint in the way, so Joan would survive. If Javi accepts the deal, then David would kill Clint before being attacked by Carver. Now the war would be even worse. With Ava or Tripp fighting off Carver, David would manage to escape. After killing Ava or Tripp, Carver and Joan would run away separately while everyone else gets their situation figured out. The main gang regroup, and they decide to continue on trying to leave Richmond. Javier and David would have their fight, but there would be no Clementine to help Javi. Instead, a walker would pull up, and David would have to leave with Gabe. Now Javi would be forced to either go after Gabe and David, or go with Kate and Maury to save Richmond. If you go after Gabe, then it would play out the same way as it did in the main game, with David dying and Gabe living. Returning back home, you'd find Kate as a walker, and if you go with Kate, then you would save Richmond, and would end up killing Troy as well. However, Gabe and David would both die in this ending. The season would end with Carver, Clementine, Gil, and AJ finding Joan far outside of Richmond. And that would be the end of A New Frontier. I know this season was a little jumbled and kinda weird, but I really did my best to try to make things accurate as to what I think would happen. Hopefully you all enjoyed it anyways, and if you did, I'm sure you'll like the next part, which is already scripted. So if you want it to come out, be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe share the series around a bit as well. But as always, tell me if you liked this part, tell me what you think will happen next, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, have a great day.